Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechvalley.com. And as you can see here now, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Well, Rabbi, I'm having a lot of fun doing all three assignments, and my column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, and the latest column is all about the pay raises that may or may not happen for the state legislators and for the administration. So I do an analysis because there's a commission that's been set up so that the legislators didn't have to be unseemly or feel unseemly about talking about it. But our guest today is Assemblyman Pete Lopez.
Hello, guys. How are you?
Schoharie.
Pleasure to see you.
You want a pay raise? I mean,
geez Louise, here we go.
Right in there.
So let's talk about something unseemly right away. You want a pay raise?
We'll jump right into the deep end.
You're a news reporter. What the commission says, that's what's going to happen?
Unless they vote.
Unless the legislature acts to revise or modify or defeat.
So they could say the commission says they deserve a pay raise.
If they do nothing, if the legislature does nothing, then it goes through.
Really?
Correct, and they'd have to do that in extraordinary session. So they'd have to either accept or reject. But they still have the power.
They don't have to accept or reject. They just have to reject.
They don't have to accept, just to reject. My apologies. But they do have the ability on their own to initiate a different dialogue if they wish. If they have agreement between the Senate and the Assembly and the governor, they could repeal the commission and do their own thing.
The legislature could.
Sure, within that period, as they do now.
Oh, so who's on the commission? Not politicians, I wouldn't think. I mean, not part of the assembly.
I just love you guys. You guys are the best.
No, the commission members are appointed by the governor, the Senate, the assembly, and they have people who are close to the leader and the governor and the Senate, and so someone might step down, someone else will be reappointed by the person. So
you've heard personally?
Well, I guess my perspective, and I'm actually coming at it from a different angle. So I'm preparing a submission to send to the commission, but the piece that I'm going to highlight really is addressing the necessary and required expenses of doing the job. So I'm coming at it from a totally different perspective. So. And bear with me.
Like I need a Cadillac or something.
Well, just to put in perspective. So in the rules of the assembly, and I'll use an urban and a rural model. So if I look at the urban model, someone may have a district that is 4 square miles, for example, and their transportation needs may be minimal, or the cost may be lesser than someone who has 7 counties, as I do. I do 1,000 miles a week in my district, and I have to leave the district routinely. So in the world that I live in, the assembly pays for 1 office. Well, I've had instances where I've had 2 hours drive between portions of my district. So to have an office in Catskill, and then at one point have people in Sydney, almost 2 hours away, it was to me a travesty. So out of my pocket, I put an office in Schoharie and an office in Sydney with permission from the speaker. And I did that sharing services, but I had to pay for computer equipment, for office equipment, for internet access, for phone lines, to fund out of my paycheck or out of other resources available to me personally.
Could it come out of your campaign account?
Some of it did, but the premise there too is the campaign account, I raise the funds.
That's right.
So, and they're intended to defend you in a race, not intended to really support or offset state purposes for supporting the office.
But again, it's the people, you're there to serve the people, so the people are really paying for that office.
So what it causes me to do is, in that case, like a volunteer fireman, I have to raise the funds just to do my job. So even outside of having a contested election. So you think of campaign funds, and you think of mailers, and you think of advertisements, and campaign signs, and flyers, and leaflets. That's the traditional. I've had to use funds, both in my own personal funds, as well as campaign funds, to subsidize the state to the tune of, I would estimate, between $20,000 and $30,000 of net expense annually. So the driving piece alone. So I just last, let me think. Last Tuesday, I was at an event and we hit a deer on the way. And this happens, I've hit many deer. So my vehicle, my fuel, my insurance, my repairs, my maintenance. So, that literally is out of my pocket. So that's probably $15,000-$20,000 a year outside of even paying for the vehicle. I drive probably 4 times as much in 1 year as an average person. So I've retired 2 vehicles already, each had 225,000 miles.
I'm just thinking though, but it's like a give and a take.
So
you're right, so, obviously, you're totally, everybody understands that, but in New York City maybe, where they're not traveling, the rent is probably triple.
But that rent is covered. There's a differential.
Really?
So the rent is covered by the majority, and their costs of traveling to and from Albany and their costs of staying in the district are also covered. So really the model, what I'm hoping to do, and I'm planning to submit, is to say to the commission, I'd like to submit to you to the congressional model. So the congressional model is really like a block funding that can support the various aspects of doing the job, the necessary and actual expenditures, but the member makes the decision. And if it exceeds what their allocation is, then they're out of luck. But rent and travel, a congressman will get reimbursed for their travel in the district. I do not.
No matter what it is.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. In Congress also, one guy in Idaho has got to go all over one state.
Yeah. So just to bear in mind, again, I'll just use the example of my vehicle. So $15,000-$20,000 a year with vehicle maintenance and fuel and wear and tear. That's net income. That's money I pay after taxes on my salary with no other than.
So then you probably, on $80,000, you're probably netting 60.
Yep.
And then
it's almost a third of my net salary.
And then another 20,000 goes off on those expenses you just listed.
Right. And that's
another. So that brings it down to 40,000.
Correct.
And in Schoharie County, the median income is about that.
For a household of
4 and you're 2.
Right.
So
So I guess my premise is, and so I'm addressing it differently. Is I said, okay, folks, I'm not here pushing for a pay raise, but it would be nice to have the actual necessary expenses covered. So that's the way I would approach it.
They're able to say that also, like maybe the pay raise is 5,000. I'm just throwing out a number, and but the expenses, which maybe for you would be maybe an extra 20,000 cover expenses.
So I'm going to submit that to them, and it's not in their purview, but I'm going to ask them to consider it and look at it.
But you're one of the honest ones. Now you take a situation like you're talking about, and you have any of these 80 some odd legislators who were legislative bad apples, and they could have really found a way to really abuse the system even further than what they abused it while they were there. So you're going to have some really tight controls on what you're proposing.
Well, it would be, and again, the congressional model is probably the best model to look at, and everything has to be submitted and vouchered and documented. So if the pay raise goes through, again, the issue is I still have to pay taxes on it. I would have to pay tax, and then the question is, what happens with that net additional income? What do I do with it? Do I give it to charity? Do I create my own method of documenting the expenses and pay for that? What do I do?
Well, Channel Albany could use some.
They could, and but in the meantime, I am preparing legislation.
I could tell you what to do.
Yeah, I am preparing legislation. I am preparing legislation to repeal the commission. And put a bill in that would one bill would say tied to the cost of living, or to 2% a year, whichever is less. And my whole premise there is, I voted for the commission with the belief that they would do something rational, that they would come forward and say, okay, we're going to look at this, we'll look at the world around us, we'll come up with some thoughtful measures, some thoughtful proposal that can be tested publicly and possibly accepted publicly. Instead, they did the same thing that the legislative leaders have done. They proposed a 40% pay raise, insulting really to the public.
Who proposed it?
Well, that was the acknowledgement. The 40% increase had come, from was it a leak from the commission?
November 10th they're supposed to.
No, but the 40% that the public has focused on.
They focused on it because that's what they focused on. That's what they felt. Their math. In the public's math, they thought that's what it would be. So and looking back on 89 was the last time there was a pay raise, and then it was the one before that.
So they just did the math from the.
They just did the math, and.
But my premise was that basic exercise to me was insulting. because what it did was it brought a proposal forward or a number forward that simply inflamed the public.
Right.
And to me, it wasn't even
But no one brought the proposal forward. The commission didn't bring the proposal forward. The media inflamed the public so they could sell papers and they could get more advertising.
Well, the 40% came from where? Where did the 40% come from?
It came from some columnist who decided to write that that's what it would be.
So as we focus on that, as we focus on the 40%, to me, that whole premise of 40% to me is insulting. And the commission, I would expect, would be more thoughtful with what they what they offer. So I'll be offering legislation. One will include the 2% or cost of living, which to me takes all the politics out of it, because that's really what we're after. So we jumped in with both feet on this. Is it eating up all your airtime here?
Yeah.
But
well, it's the hot issue today.
Yeah. So the whole premise is, how do you reasonably reimburse?
Yeah.
How do you reasonably encourage people to serve? What are the other limitations? Is it their only job? Do you limit outside income?
Right.
What other conditions do you put on? And ultimately thinking that you want people to be able to serve and be able to serve in a way that is sustainable for their household.
Okay, so I got to ask you
yes,
to
please.
move on, because that was very thoughtful and I do appreciate it. One of your colleagues in the Republican conference passed away, Bill Nojay.
He did, yes. We grieve his loss, yes. That was very unsettling.
Could you reflect on his life as you knew it in the Assembly?
Bill Nojay was literally a neighbor of mine in Chamber. I didn't have a lot of contact with him outside of Albany, but found him intelligent, passionate, found him very articulate, found him very, very energized. So my family, my wife and I, felt him to be a person who took his job seriously. So we were incredibly saddened by the news, and certainly all of us still wondering what would have caused.
Well,
what would have caused that?
It was the indictment that he had to appear later that day in federal court, and he took the coward's way out.
I guess just reflecting on any human scenario, what drives a person to that point of despair. Everyone is different.
Did you ever know him as being a little, I don't want to say crazy, but a little bit off? I mean, because I've known him to be, maybe he was a little off.
I found Bill pushing very conservative agendas and very engaged and very strident in some ways in terms of trying to right the ship of Albany. His goal was to clean up Albany. That was the way he presented himself to us.
And on his talk show, I mean, he really.
Yeah, I know he was a talk show celebrity. I never really heard his show.
Okay, it was mainly in the Finger Lakes and some western
Central
New York,
Rochester area, sure.
Livingston County,
yeah.
And he, when Shelley Silver had all his problems, he would open his show with some Judaic music. It's not really,
No, so I would concur with your observation. I shared that observation, and it's heartbreaking to think of it in those terms.
It is.
And again, people are innocent until proven guilty, so it wasn't my place to cast judgment. But again, I'm saddened by the loss and saddened by the circumstances.
If he was indicted, he would have been added to my list of legislative bad apples, but he's not. So
I understand. And that to me, this part here.
No, they can't see. It's too small. The type is too small.
Still, you can see. I mean,
there's a lot of names.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of names.
The bottom line, no one's going to read it.
A lot of
not
names.
one or two lines.
There's 60.
And that frustration, again,
33 assemblymen and 23 senators.
Yeah, and for me, the frustration is, as we do our job, this becomes a focus. So instead of focusing on poverty, instead of focusing on creating strengthening the economy, instead of focusing on housing, instead of focusing on agriculture,
focus on the mental health of the legislature.
Fixated on this, and so to me, it's a horrible loss of energy and potential.
Well, let's move on then.
Oh, he's all business now. There we go. Yes, sir. Moving on. I don't know what's on your list, so I'm happy just to respond.
When you go back to session in January,
yes,
you're there 6 years. How many years are you there?
Actually, I'm just completely.
You were elected in 07.
Yeah, completing my 10th
right?
year.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So you completed your 10th year.
Right.
So you will be, on a seniority list, you will be number 63.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
top
interesting.
half.
So
Yeah,
you
that's
are
interesting.
above the half.
So whatever
in 10
that means,
years.
but-
Well,
but-
what you are is above the halfway mark
Yeah.
in terms of high seniority.
Would
in
it be
just 10
important-
years.
Right,
But
and
Mark,
I
would
guess-
it be important where he is in the Republican Party? I mean, maybe to be
Yeah.
a minority leader?
Well, no, I mean, he's one of the,
Right.
yeah, but I look at it as the legislature, the assembly as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Because
know
it's
what you're
important,
saying,
it's important to try to get the mindset into saying we are one legislative body. We are not Republicans and
That's correct.
Democrats. We are all
That's right.
one. And every time I show this list to a
Yeah.
Democrat, they say, yeah, but where am I among the Democrats?
Yeah, and that
And I
statement,
say, you know,
that statement you made was profound. I was having that conversation with the rabbi before we went on air. And to me, what's missing, and what's missing in our society, is the premise that we are one. We are not. We should not be a collection of self-labeled individuals
Mhm.
who put ourselves in little boxes and then use that as a means of fighting with each other
Right.
over priorities and privileges. And I saw this play out, not to go too far off script, I saw this play out with the terrorist shootings.
Mhm.
And again, there was a concern about loss of Latinos in Florida, for example, and the effect on the gay and lesbian transgendered population. And my premise is we mourn for everyone.
Yeah.
You are Americans.
Yeah.
You are part of our community. You are our family. I'm not interested in how we label each other. And we run into that too much, both in terms of how work is done in
Right.
Albany, but you see it spill out into the broader society. And to me, that's a loss of human potential. That's a horrible waste
that's
of time and energy.
why I didn't break it out.
No,
into
I
Democrat
appreciate it. But I
Republican.
wanted to hit that
Yeah.
statement because it was very profound, and
Thank you.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
So just so you know, when you
Yeah.
bring it back to your leader, Brian Cole,
Yes.
that you're probably higher than he is. No, he's going to be number 17, so 35 rather. He'll be number 35.
Sure, and I guess my premise
So
on that
you won't
is-
be too far behind him.
Sure, and I guess my premise on that is as I do my job, and thank you for that. It's gratifying and horrifying, and both in the same breath. But my premise is I'm more concerned about how can I use my skills and abilities and experience to serve people.
Right, but the
outside of
but your seniority
benchmarking seniority.
gets you for people to focus on your skills and your talents and your abilities.
There is a
And-
perspective of how long you've been in the seat. And
Right.
that's,
So
right.
someone like
which I chafe at to some
Well,
regard.
someone like Todd Kaminsky,
Sure.
who was U.S. attorney or
Right. He was a district attorney.
or
Right.
U.S. attorney, federal level.
Right. That's
So
what I mean.
He was, and he came into the assembly. He was right at the bottom of everything. Now he's in the Senate.
Sure.
He's in the Senate. He has a little more higher profile if he wins
True,
re-election.
depending on who has
Yeah.
the majority.
Okay.
Yeah, his profile may actually reduce
Well,
if he
no,
goes
because
from
it's a
Assembly
smaller
majority
body,
to Senate
because it's-
majority. Senate minority,
but
that is.
being in the Senate minority is still high, as a freshman, is still higher than being a freshman majority member,
You certainly represent more people. But in terms of clout and getting
But
things
there's
done.
a camaraderie in the Senate
Yeah.
that you can get past some of that.
Yeah.
And I think, but I just
He's got all this inside baseball stuff going
Exactly.
there.
But, people think like, there's automatic 98% reelection rate in the assembly. But,
There's a lot of turnover.
But there's 10 seats
Oh
that are
yeah,
open.
huge turnover, especially in the last 2 or 3 terms, massive
Exactly.
turnover. Yeah.
So you're going to see
Right.
at least 10 new faces.
But my frustration with that, Mark, is, again, I've seen this, is the faces change, but the institution doesn't. So I serve in the feudal era. This institution is the Lord of so-and-so and the Duke of so-and-so,
Right.
and you swear fealty to the Lord of the realm,
Mhm.
and their power is absolute to me. I'm always happy to see new faces and new
Right.
blood, but I'm equally saddened that the institution changes. These people are quickly whipped into shape
Yeah.
and effectively directed and told what to do, how to vote, how to act.
Right.
And to me, that is the worst continuation of this
Fiefdom.
winner-take-all
Yeah, right.
fiefdom.
Yeah.
To me, the institution needs to change, which is, my premise is, hierarchy, feudal era, time in the seat. None of that should matter. What should matter is the value of the idea and the energy of the person coming in. What do they offer to make life better for all of us?
Now you're in the leadership of the Republican
so I chafe at the constraints I'm in. But so again, I'm half Puerto Rican, English, Scotch, Dutch, German, Republican, conservative, upstate, Miami, born.
You're a Heinz
whatever.
57, yeah, okay.
Well, we're going to anoint you as an honorable Jew over here.
Yes,
on the Jewish view.
Absolutely, over here. No, it's wonderful, and I'm so thankful to be on your show.
But I just wanted to. But you're also in the leadership in the Assembly Republican Conference.
I am, right.
And what's your title there?
Oh, they have me as majority. I don't want
conference
to say
leader.
Conference leader, right?
Okay.
Assistant majority conference.
So you get a little bit of an extra bump in.
They help with that, sure.
No, there's what
a stipend,
$8,000, $9,000 stipend that goes with that.
Right.
So that's okay. So that last year was the first year for you, right?
In that role, the first term.
Yeah. All right.
First term.
So hopefully, either you'll continue in that, or maybe they'll bump you up further.
Right.
Do you think?
But I guess I'll go back to the district. So the people I serve who are flood ravaged, homeless, have no job, they don't care about that.
No, they don't. But you have to.
I do to some
personally,
extent.
because
if it translates into helping me do my job
more
effectively.
It'll make it easier for you to put that extra stipend into the district office and help your citizen, your constituents.
So
so let me ask you.
So we have the academic aspect that you're addressing,
and
then I live in the real world of dealing with, and it's more personality driven, to be honest.
No one's ever said that about me before.
It's more, at least in terms of this framework. In this framework, the reality is more personality driven and more personal interaction than it is title and time. I just would submit that to you.
Do you see the Republican...
He's not even listening.
No, I am. Do you see the Republican conference as going below 40 members?
That's an excellent question. They say all politics is local, are local.
Yeah.
All politics is local. Help me with the phrasing. Local, and ultimately, at the assembly level, there'll be some interplay between what's happening in Washington. But I would dare say many of these races are going to be decided by the candidate and how they present. So if
you're losing 4 members of the Republican conference.
Yeah.
And you don't know if there's going to be a Democrat filling those slots.
Correct. So there's a potential, of course.
That you have what, 42 members now? In that conference?
42. Right. So there is a potential. But it's hard for me to predict. I'd need my Johnny.
No, but out of there's
the light show. I need my great turban, the great Karnak with the gold turban and the feather. I need that to predict.
I've seen you do miracles like that. I've seen it. But you have 4.
Yeah. So there's
seats.
a potential, but there's a potential to swing the other way too. So depending on the nature of the district,
the ones that are up on the Democratic side, Goldfeder and Wright and Kaminsky.
Oh, you're talking about vacancies.
Vacancies, right.
Yeah, but that
you're not going to win any of those Democrat vacancies.
Yeah. So no, I'm just talking about all members running at the same time. So that's not to say that there aren't incumbents who may lose from either side.
Right. I'm looking at the open seats because that those are going to...
I'll just use as an example, in the district next to me, Assemblyman McGee is facing a very serious challenge. He's been a long-term incumbent.
And his health is challenged. I see him in a wheelchair.
I work with Bill. I serve on the Assembly Committee, but what's to say that seat doesn't change? It may, even though it's not open. So that's all I'm saying.
And it's been in Democrat hands for many, many years.
It has, for many years. He's got a long list.
Yeah, I do. I do. Now I noticed that something in the bills that you sponsored in the last session. Now in 2017, you got to refile all these. So
I have bills that I've sponsored primarily, but also multi-sponsored or co-sponsored.
But the prime sponsors that you are into this diesel emission and very green terms of fuel.
That's one of my passions, sure. Alternate energy, and that bill's just a manifestation. And you'll see more.
Well, you have a lot of,
multi or co-sponsored. You'll see that amplified even more.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you're branding yourself to be this.
Yeah, I guess my premise is, and I picked this up from a phrase from former Governor Patterson, where he used the phrase that energy is the new currency. So think about that phrase and then apply it to your everyday life. You can't turn on a switch. You can't drive to work. You can't heat your home. You can't do anything. You can't produce a good without having affordable, reliable access to energy. So my premise is we have a lot of opportunity, and the biodiesel piece is just one aspect. Biodiesel is a potential crop, a potential sustainable crop that could be used with certain limits.
So your personal car also?
My Jeep, yeah, I had two. It was a biodiesel.
Yeah.
And I ran on a B20 blend of canola and soybean oil mixed with diesel, and I smelled like McDonald's as I would drive through town. But I was also getting 35 miles per gallon with an SUV. And again, that fuel feedstock was being produced domestically. Now, there is some challenge. Some people talk about food versus fuel. There's a whole series of issues and arguments. But my premise is I would like us, America wins when we have cheap, affordable, plentiful energy reserves at our disposal.
Right.
And so I would like to see a heavy emphasis on renewable resources in that mix. That's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
Wind, solar, biofuels, geothermal,
right.
All of that. Yeah.
I got that. Now you have I just want to point out, now that your car was hit by a deer, now what are you driving?
Actually, I had two biodiesels. One was an 05 Liberty Common Rail diesel. Right. That went to 225,000, and then I had an 06. Same vehicle.
Right.
That one I just retired because the valve went on the engine.
Right.
I was very frustrated. I wanted 100,000 miles more out of it.
That's
so
right.
Temporarily I'm driving another Liberty, but it's not the biodiesel because they're too expensive. So the other ones are too old. The 06s are too old.
Yeah, and
the new ones are too expensive for me to afford right now.
But when you hit the deer, did you get it fixed? Did you get that car fixed already?
That car I hit. Well, with my biodiesels, I probably hit about.
No, I'm talking about your current car. You just said last week you hit
just this summer I had to trade vehicles because the
yeah.
biodiesel
hit the one that hit the deer was finished.
The biodiesel gave up the ghost through a valve.
Okay.
A valve died.
Okay. So let me
from being overworked and underpaid. How's
okay.
that?
Now you also why are you concerned about pro rata license fees for seasonal bars?
Pro rata license fees
for seasonal bars.
Oh yes, absolutely. That is district driven. So
yeah,
he was surprised he got that reaction from me. He's like, "What?" He expected to say, "What?"
Seasonal bars.
So yes. We have in Schoharie, we have a bar that has an open to the public piece that's outside, and then an open to the public piece that's inside. Right. They have to pay for two licenses.
On a porch, you mean, like a deck?
They have an outside, they have an outside piece
like that.
And so they have part of their operation is seasonal.
Yeah.
And they have to pay for two licenses.
Really?
And pay two fees and two submissions. And so the premise was, stop it.
Yeah,
Let's merge it into one application.
So it's not just that one bar, it's every bar around the state.
Well, every bar that has a seasonal component to it,
like
where they're
example,
forced to have a separate
In
license.
Del Mar, we have a restaurant called Swifties.
Swifties.
And they have an outdoor patio that's only for the
I guess I'd have to look at the way it's
summer.
constructed, but in this particular case, this person was required by the liquor authority to have two licenses, which made no sense. So back to bills that I initiate or support.
A
lot of it's driven by what's happening real world in the district.
And not just
so
for
that
you,
bill.
every
That bill was
legislator.
actually, if you can imagine,
Yeah.
I gave that bill over to one of my colleagues to advance. Then it was picked up by another. So Assemblywoman, she's a new Assemblywoman from the Rexford area.
Carrie Warner.
Carrie Warner actually wound up picking up that bill,
Okay.
which I co-sponsored, and we passed it. So that bill was actually picked up and
Passed by
chaptered.
the Assembly. Oh, it was
And the Senate
chaptered.
was actually chaptered.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's a
I
small
didn't know that.
subsection.
I
I
just
got
picked
about
it-
20 or 40
I picked
more.
it out of the blue. I
Yeah,
didn't know that
you're
was
like,
one of your
what?
successes. Okay.
Such a dry.
Now, what about
topic.
this 3-year hiking trail safety? No, it's not a dry topic when you talk about bars. There's
No, that's
nothing
true.
dry
That's
about
true.
talking
No, that
about
would be
bars.
more prohibition.
That was
That's true.
That was a pun.
That was
You would
pretty
see
funny.
if
I like
was,
that.
Okay.
I like your style.
So you've established a 3-year hiking trail safety pilot program.
Yes, so this one goes back to my district as well. So in my region, we've had numerous fatalities, individuals, and we love nature as a society. We love the outdoors, but when it comes to addressing and going out into rugged terrain, often were very ill prepared. So we've had individuals who lost their lives due to lack of knowledge of the trails, lack of proper dress, people going out in flip-flops.
You can say it. It's stupidity.
I can't say that. No, because it is though. I can't say that.
No,
but I would say you can say that. But I would say
that's what
lack
it is.
of knowledge. I would say ignorance.
Look,
carelessness.
if you're going into rugged terrain, you look it up on the internet, you learn, you do all the prep work. If you're not going to do that, it's just plain stupidity.
Culturally,
I'm sorry,
people are used to having everything instantly available to them. So people will come from environments where they don't understand. Transport themselves.
Let's go to
look at that beautiful peak. I'm going to leave my home, my suburban home. I'm going to wear my flip-flops and my shorts. I'm not going to prepare for the weather. I'm going to start hiking trails that I really don't know about, which really aren't really marked in a fashion that someone can understand. This came to my attention. So one was the loss of life, which was devastating.
Okay.
The other piece was that on many of these trails, unlike a ski trail, so if you go to ski or snowboarding, trails are rated and ranked. So you know if it's a green dot,
that's right.
it's easy. If it's a blue square, it's moderate, it's a intermediate.
Red
if
triangle.
If it's a black diamond, that's expert. If it's a double diamond, you better be darn good, or else you're in big trouble. We don't have that on our trail system, including our state DEC and parks trails.
Right.
So I've routinely seen individuals who not just in terms of dress, but also in terms of physical limitations, physical conditioning, will start on a trail that may seem nice and then get a mile or 2 miles back and find themselves in trouble. And have themselves at risk. So my premise was...
And quite often there's no cell tower nearby.
Correct.
So you can't even call on
Correct.
the cell phone.
No, and so my premise was to help ensure that people have an enjoyable time.
Okay.
And can go in with a better understanding of what's an easy trail, what's a harder trail, what's an expert trail, and be prepared, back to your point, to at least give them some upfront consideration. When they look at a trail map, they can see a green dot, so it's gentle rolling slopes, and maybe an ADA grade, Americans with Disability Act grade that someone can address on a walker or with a cane. So that one was really tied to loss of life and physical suffering.
So what's the timeline? 3-year hiking trail safety pilot program?
Yeah, so the premise was to
have
take
this funded
DEC,
for 3 years?
Yes,
or?
and to have DEC take
okay.
portions of their state system and experiment with it, and try to assess the trail, see if they could get a trail to consistently fall in the category.
This would be under Parks and Rec? Or
Parks and Rec and
DEC?
DEC, both, yeah.
And what?
This was under DEC, I think, this particular bill.
And did it pass?
It has not, no. And it hasn't...
You're going to put it in again next year?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
That's good.
And I have many, many more to introduce.
Okay, now let me ask you about this. You wanted to extend, this is again a local law that the expiration of the authorization of imposing, in Greene County, imposing an additional 1% sales tax and compensating use tax.
That one I chafe at. I really...
Because you're not in favor of increasing taxes, but this is extending the tax from sunset.
What happens, and this is the bane of the New York State Legislature, that particular example. So in any event, a county has authorization to initiate a sales tax up to a certain limit under state statute. In many cases, from Long Island to the North Country to Buffalo to the Catskills, local governments often come back to request additional consideration, and it requires an act of the state legislature. So the state legislature is asked to support an extension of a sales tax that may be 1% above what they legally would be authorized otherwise. My answer to that is I'm really not interested in getting caught in this push me, pull me mode of governing. And I've actually introduced 2 pieces of legislation that call for a public referendum for any increase in sales tax or local taxes. It takes the legislature out of it.
Well, could you get accused, if you had an opponent, could you get accused of being in favor of hiking taxes?
Sure, or you could be the opposite. You could run into a scenario where Kevin Cahill refused to do it, and the county lost $2 million in funding, and it caused loss of programming for social services and mental health.
And he got hit
and
the other way.
So it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't. I'm using my...
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so my answer to that is the 2 pieces I put in. One allows a permissive referendum. Someone would petition. And then I have one that would require a mandatory referendum. So if a county wants to expend beyond its limit, I'm not here to micromanage your affairs. You're individually elected. You're constitutionally created as a separate branch or a separate level of government. We're going to give it back to your voters.
Right.
So I don't have to answer to your voters. You do, because it's your decision, your budget, your revenue. I shouldn't be in the position of having to interpret or be the bad guy either way. So bills like this, and this causes members to run around in small circles.
I know. That's why I brought it up to you.
And that's why I put a bill in, because I'm about solutions. I don't like dealing with symptoms.
Right.
So I have the two bills, and to me, it makes sense. Give it back to the county government. Give it back to the town government. You have a budget. If you want to go past your budget, it's going to require a referendum. Your people are going to vote on it, and they're going to know that you initiated it.
Right.
It's your spending plan, your spending proposals, and ultimately you'll be accountable. And I've served as a local official, so to me, it's a fair conversation. It's a fair and balanced view.
And the more local officials that keep getting elected to the legislature, you can have a little former local official association.
Oh, I guess there are many who are. People come from all over, but many folks kind of work their way up. But
now you have a bill that relates to school aid computer listings for school districts.
Yes.
I don't know what the heck that says or what that means.
Yeah, so basically, 2 years ago, the governor refused to do school aid runs.
Oh.
Hello? Geez, Mr. Governor, you should be providing school board members with a sense of what your budget contains or doesn't contain, and how that affects our district. So this would be compelling the governor to do his job.
To do the school runs, school aid runs.
Hello, Governor, do your job. You're not doing it, I'm putting a bill in to compel you to do your job.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
But when the legislature passes the budget, disposes of the budget, does the legislature release school aid runs?
So when the governor, they do.
They do.
So yes, and as each house does their one house version, they'll do school aid runs.
Right.
So Albany has a case of the runs. I threw that in for your sake. Thank you. But the premise is that the governor, as he produces his executive budget, in my mind, has the obligation to let the rest of the world know what does that mean for each school district. He withheld the runs. He was busy being punitive, which he often does, and he was saying, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to give you anything. I'm not doing anything for you. We were fighting over Common Core. He was a child advocate.
He was the lobbyist for the children.
Self-labeled
lobbyist for children.
Hero of education.
Right.
And he was busy beating up education. And so my premise is stop it. Yeah. Let's have an adult in the room, do your job, produce school aid runs with your executive budget, so we can have a sane conversation on what does your budget mean for education, public education in New York State.
Yeah, but that's. But you said, when each house delivers their budget,
and that's March.
They have, that's March.
And
they have their
schools
school
are trying to position themselves months before that, trying to figure things out. And
so the governor should do something.
We're voting on school budgets
at an academic level, because he only proposes. It's the legislature that disposes.
Well, he proposes,
and the school
it's more than academic. So to me,
might look at the governor's budget the way he proposes it.
He liked my term academic.
Yeah,
snuck back in. But to me, it's more than academic, and here's why.
Why?
So when someone presents a budget, it's not just numbers. It's policy priorities. You're putting weight by putting a value on that particular item. You're putting your policy preference and your weight behind everything that's in your budget, because you're assigning a monetary value to it. So it's a priority statement. So if you're telling me that you can't even produce a priority statement with value and weight behind public education, you're not doing your job. Put that bill and do your job, Governor.
All right.
Thank you. Mark, we're out of time.
I love this. I have to come back.
Okay. You will. Okay.
We have to have you back, because I'm going to ask you what's happening in the legislature, the assembly in the future. But in the meantime, you're doing great work, as we always say, and you're on the ball with the people. You're a people's.
I love people. I love serving.
You're the people's
man.
I
love you guys. You guys are the best.
There you go. That makes it good. In any case, we wish you a lot of success, and continue on with your good work.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
There you go.
Thank you.